Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Heroes. It's episode 15. I'm Jon Schnepp, bringing you the world of cinematic heroes and villains. And with me today, we've got Dennis Tzeng. What's up, Dennis Tzeng?
What's up? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being back. And again, we've got Robert Meyer Burnett. Thank you for coming.
John?
Thanks for being on the show again, as usual. We've got some of the usual suspects here to get sweaty today. It's an extra sweaty day in Hollywood, California.
Hot and humid.
You know what's hotter? Florida. I just came back from the Florida SuperCon, extra muggy, filled with a bunch of sweaties. Thank you guys all for coming out. Everyone who came to my table and said they watch Heroes, keep watching the show. I really appreciate it. And just everyone who just watches Movie Talk and all the shows that we do. So really appreciate that. So keep watching Heroes in the next few weeks. Right now, we're going to get right on to the subject of New Line. Number one, New Line takes on Vertigo, while Warner Brothers keeps all of the rest of the heroes. So basically what's going on is New Line is going to be the home of SANDMAN, a whole bunch of other potentially dark and disturbing characters from DC's Vertigo comic book line that's been around forever, while Warner Brothers proper is going to remain the home of Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, and all the other DC, just like the regular superheroes, and like the kind of the weirder, more like, that one's a little bizarre, he eats people. Well, maybe that'll be Vertigo, or like that guy, he's in charge of everything, in the sleeping world, Slumberland. That might be a little too weird. We don't know if he's going to interact too well with Superman and Batman. Let's make that maybe part of the cinematic universe of Vertigo, the Vertigo line. So I like it. I think it's a great choice for DC, for Warner Brothers to make this kind of splitting of the hairs, so to speak, but like it's all part of the same world, but like not really. What are your thoughts about this, Dennis?
I think creatively, hopefully, I don't know if they established that, okay, this is definitely not part of the same universe or not yet, but I hope it is, because I hope they don't do that, because that way creatively anyone who works on these kind of more obscure, weirder, darker, offbeat movies can kind of go into different places, like with Sandman or what other characters they take, because we don't want them to be limited by this DC universe that we are getting the mainstream Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, Green Lantern, all that stuff. We don't want to have each one affect theirs. So I think ultimately it's a good idea. New Line Cinema, I do associate more with schlocky kind of B-movie horror movies.
Right.
But I think they can maybe help rebrand it this way if they do this.
How about you, Robert?
Well, I think what they're not saying is that the Vertigo universe is R-rated.
Yeah.
You read Sandman's my favorite comic book of all time, and the early issues, like 24 Hours, when Dr. Destiny traps these people in a diner and all kinds of depraved and debauched stuff happens. You could never do that when you're trying to sell toys.
Serial killer convention, anyone?
That was so great. Yeah. The Corinthian.
Yeah.
What a great character. But yeah, that's what they're saying is that we now have an offshoot, and if they wanted to go darker with their superheroes, they could. But it makes sense to me. I'm really excited about it. I think about things like Kid Eternity, which is a crazy comic, but I would love to see that as a movie.
Sure.
Get David Lynch to direct Kid Eternity.
That sounds crazy. Speaking of darkness, Justice League Dark is going to remain with Warner Brothers. So, Guillermo del Toro was attached for several years, and now he's off the project. What do you think about that, Dennis?
Yeah, it's not a big surprise. Obviously he's been connected to this project for years and talking about it, but because there was never any real movement on it, I kind of didn't ever buy that this was going to come through. But it looks like they're going to go ahead without him. I would definitely want to see him do it, but he's got a million things on his plate, and I do think it's fascinating that they are going to keep this with the main WB universe, because that means you're going to potentially see someone like a Swamp Thing interacting with Superman and Batman, which I'm not so sure if that's a good idea or not.
I kind of hope that Swamp Thing goes to Vertigo.
Okay.
They haven't said which characters are going to Vertigo and which characters are going to stay in the WB universe. I think Dr. Fate makes perfect sense to go to Justice League Dark. They don't have to make it like the comic book.
Yeah.
Deadman goes to Justice League Dark. They could take Zatanna and a whole bunch of Mandrake the Magician if they wanted to get that corny. But I'm just saying there's a lot of properties that DC has that aren't as dark as, I would love to see Alan Moore's Swamp Thing run turn into a series of feature films at New Line. That would be incredible.
Well, it's like, what is going on how is Suicide Squad going to be classified? They talked this week about how there's a therapist. on the set of Suicide Squad.
Now, for real, just in case the actors start
for
to
the
feel a
actors,
little
if they get
loopy.
too deep into their process and deep into their characters, like, so is that an R-rated film? Is Suicide Squad?
No, it's going to be PG-13.
I know you got Batman.
They got
but
Batman in it. It's
man,
definitely PG-13.
I mean,
Deadshot's going to take some headshots, but you're not going to see any heads explode. You're going to,
but
you know,
curiouser and curiouser. What they're doing is kind of the Wild West there. I mean, the fact that you're getting a Suicide Squad movie at all, like that we're going to see that,
and that we're excited about it.
I'm
is also
excited about it.
Totally insane. Like when I first heard they were doing Suicide Squad, I was like, what? Yeah. And now I'm actually kind of excited about it, to be honest with you.
The more pictures that come out, I'm like, okay,
yeah, I'm in.
But they're doing the right thing, though, because they're putting someone that's like Batman and Joker in it, so they will get the casual mainstream audience to watch it. Because people are going to hear on the streets, Suicide Squad, what's that? I don't know. Oh, Batman's in it? Oh, Joker's in it?
They're going.
They're going to watch it.
No, Killer Croc's in it? Who?
Yeah.
The Bronze Tiger? What are you talking about? What is this, some kind of lotion I put on? The Bronze Tiger?
Captain
no,
Boomerang.
It's a character. I know, Captain Boomerang, one of the cheesiest characters on the planet. He's not that cheesy, Don. He's cheesy. Just relax. He's a corny character. I don't care. Maybe Jai Courtney's going to revitalize him. Be throwing boomerangs all crazy style like the Matrix. Still corny. Yeah. Boomerangs. Anyway.
I don't know. I think it's anything that is called Suicide Squad. I mean, does that come with a trigger warning? I mean, what about the people who once attempted that? I mean, come on, what do you do? Right. It's not going to be a nice film. You're going to have some weird, crazy cabaret Joker.
Right.
I mean, that could be some really dark, but not dark.
PG-13 dark.
PG-13 dark.
Hey, guys, let's move on to the next subject. Tom Holland is Spider-Man. Yeah. Finally, they've got a Spider-Man. It's a kid, a young adult, 19 years old. What do you guys think? Here he is. He's going to be Spider-Man.
I'm not too familiar with his work, but I mean, we talked about this earlier today. After seeing Asa Butterfield in that, what was that, 10,000 Saints trailer as that whiny emo kid, I'm like, I'm kind of glad they went a different direction. And then what happened? Kevin Feige was talking about.
Kevin Feige dropped this paragraph long thing. I'll read it out for you guys. It's the soap opera in high school and the supporting characters that are interesting. Just as we've done a heist movie, we hadn't seen that in a long time, or a shrinking movie in a long time. We haven't seen a John Hughes movie in a long time. Not that we can make a John Hughes movie, only John Hughes could, but we're inspired by him, and merging that with the superhero genre in a way we haven't done before excites us. I read that and I was like, hell yeah, that excites me too. I think that's amazing. Marvel's done such a great job with taking different genres, just like Captain America, the Winter Soldier had that kind of, 70s spy movie type thing. I mean, all these different genres. Now we've got Ant-Man, which I haven't seen yet, but I'm hearing it's like a heist kind of fun, thriller type thing. And now we've got this, which is going to have that like lighthearted, hey, kids are in school and what Spider-Man's there? It's like, I'm excited. Like, I love John Hughes films. What do you think, Robert?
Oh, I think it's great. I mean, I was talking to a girl the other day about Some Kind of Wonderful. Remember that? Now, Howard Deutsch directed it, but John Hughes produced it.
Eric
Stoltz. And I was like, those are the kind of, why not see a superhero movie? They have to get away from this world-destroying climax in every film. Agree. Why not make a film where the stakes are all personal? Like, if Spider-Man wants to go to the prom, and he desperately wants to go with his date, and she's going to date someone else.
Right. That could Flash Thompson. She's going to date Flash Thompson.
Absolutely, and that could be an epic. I mean, that's what John Hughes did.
Right.
He made 16 Candles.
He has to go to the prom, but he also has to fight Scorpion at the same time.
There you go. I mean, your 16th birthday is a big deal.
Totally.
I mean, it doesn't get much more dramatic than that. And if you have superpowers, it's even worse. What if you're Anthony Michael Hall and you're Spider-Man? That could be. There's some drama there. I'm interested. I want to see.
What do you think, Dennis?
Well, now you have Spider-Man. This rebooted movie is going to come out after Civil War, and we know Spider-Man's going to be in Civil War in some capacity. We don't know how big, but how about whatever happens in Civil War affects him? Look, he's a young kid, and now he has to go back to high school, and he has to do all those things you're talking about. How is that going to affect him? Because he's going to look at like other people, like, how come everyone's worried about these little things, but I've experienced almost like world-changing events, and now I have to deal with these things that like maybe he has a different perspective than the other kids in school.
Well, if he's Spider-Man, he definitely has a different perspective. He's like, I got to do some geometry homework. Yeah, I'm crying for you. I got to go save the planet, or something. I have to go fight the Green Goblin and Mysterio, and then do this homework.
But he still wants to kiss a girl.
Yeah,
and I think that anybody who's anybody, no matter what kind of superpowers you might have, if there's a girl you like and she doesn't like you back, it's just as painful as if the Rhino is beating your ass down one street.
Sure. Maybe
up
more
the other.
painful.
Maybe more painful.
Hey, all right. Tom Holland, good luck, man. We're going to be looking for you in Civil War. All right, moving on, we're going to go into our thing that we call minor mutations. This is where I'm just going to run off a whole bunch of things, little news bits of the week, and then we're going to talk about them. So we got some Fantastic Four TV spots, a whole bunch of like extra cool, exciting Human Torch TV spots, more of the Thing. The Fantastic Four is looking great. Ant-Man TV spots. I don't know. I counted about 400 of them. I stopped watching them because I'm like, look, I just want to see the movie. It looks great. I can't wait to see it. We've got the official title. We start shooting Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 in February, March 2016. James Gunn has officially said, yep, that's what it's called. It's called Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. You know, just like, you know, the mixtape Volume 1. Here we go, Volume 2. All right, another one, Olivia Munn showing off her Psylocke sword skills. So got somebody throwing that on Instagram, her just kind of nonchalantly waving a sword around, then kind of smiles at the end. That she at least knows how to use a sword now. Then we got Tyrese Gibson going off about being a new Green Lantern. A bunch of pictures with him and Chris Pine. He's saying, without saying anything, he's saying a lot, saying, I took the oath, I can't say anything, but then I took the oath and I can't say anything. Here's a picture that somebody else made of me as Green Lantern, even though he's been talking about it for like 6 months. Is he Green Lantern, Dennis? What's going on? Let's lead it off with you. All this stuff.
I hope so. Not in the sense of I like Tyrese. He's funny in those Fast and the Furious movies.
Right.
I don't know. I don't think he's exactly my choice. I would pick someone like a Chiwetel Ejiofor or Idris Elba for that role. But the way he's been going on about it on Instagram, I'm like, if you're not it, you're gonna get a lot of flack the day that they announce. Like if Comic-Con comes and they announce something totally different. And he's gonna get so much crap on Instagram and Twitter, on Facebook, like ha ha ha, you know, all that stuff.
It's somewhat frightening for him.
Yeah.
Because if they announce Chris Pine and not him, say they announce 3 Green Lanterns and it's Chris Pine and 2 other dudes and it's not him, that's gonna be kind of embarrassing. Because he's been putting so much effort into like taking these Green Lantern pictures that other people have done. I've seen him for like 6 months of him as Green Lantern, all these different cool kind of Instagrammy, like, you know, Photoshop skills. Some people have some heavy Photoshop skills. They're laying them on thick. They got Tyrese in there. They got Chris Pine. I'm like, all right, that looks cool. If they made a Green Lantern movie like that, I'd be into it. So what do you think, Robert?
Well, I think, look, I'm a huge Green Lantern fan. I love Jeff Johns' run on Green Lantern. I love Blackest Night. You know, I loved all of that, all the different colors of the rainbow.
Yellow lanterns,
You know,
red
I
lanterns,
loved all that.
the black lanterns, zombie lanterns, everybody.
And I really want to see Guy Gardner. I want to see the live action Guy Gardner. You know, I don't know who. I always thought Woody Harrelson would be a good Guy Gardner.
He would be a good Guy Gardner.
I mean, he might be a little old now, but I still think he could play Guy Gardner.
Got to get a wig for that.
I know, you got to do that. But, you know, Tyrese, I do think he's a good choice if he's playing Jon Stewart. And I think Chris Pine's a great choice to play. Look, I'll admit to you right now, I liked Ryan Reynolds as Green Lantern. I kind of like that movie.
You don't have to whisper it, even though we disagree with you.
Okay, it was not a good movie. But I really did enjoy seeing Oa and the Green Lantern Corps.
He wasn't the reason it sucked.
No.
It was one of these
did a
movies
good job,
where,
and he did the best that he could do within like a pretty bad script, and it was really horribly executed and horribly realized.
Yeah, it wasn't. And Martin Campbell directed. I expected more, but if they'd done a Guardians of the Galaxy and spent 5 minutes on Earth and just gone into space and not had some goofy cloud villain as you brought up about
Cloud.
Galactus.
Poo Cloud.
Horrible. It's just horrible.
Love the
Hashtag Poo Cloud.
Not good. But I'm excited. But they haven't announced a Green Lantern movie. Is it going to be a Green Lantern Corps movie?
You know
They
what?
haven't said.
They haven't said, but it makes the most sense because the best part of that Green Lantern movie was on Oa.
It was on Oa.
That was the best part. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. Why are we going back to Earth to watch that guy with the giant
But
screaming
that's how they
head?
got everyone to go see it, even though it wasn't a huge hit. Because remember that WonderCon, they released that trailer, and it was all the stuff in outer space.
Right.
And they made it look like the movie had a lot to do with that. And then you actually watched it, and it was like 15 minutes, and then they came back to Earth.
See, I like stuff like Mark Strong as Sinestro was
that was
really
great.
good.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to see Kilowog.
Yep.
Why didn't you make that movie and stick with it?
Well, you know, if they could rewind back time and not have a giant brown poo cloud be the villain, a dude screaming with a giant head, like some
that
David
was-
Lynch film. It was
it
like
was
such
not-
a weird film. Very uneven. Not as uneven as like some of these other superhero films where you're like, I don't even know what I'm watching anymore. But at least Green Lantern had somewhat, like once we were at Oa and he was training, I was like, all right, I get what they're doing. Then it fell apart. So it's like one of those films I was like, almost could have made it and then just blew itself up.
Yeah.
All right. Fantastic Four spots, Ant-Man spots. What do you guys think?
I did not check them out. I'm kind of like, we have to review a lot of these trailers for Movie Talk, for Heroes,
Right.
Jedi Council. So we have to see those. With the TV spots, I tend to not watch them because I'm already in more than I wanted to. But
I've already seen enough.
yeah.
I think, look, you know what? Fantastic Four to me is a huge question mark. I really liked Chronicle. I thought Chronicle was a terrific superhero origin story. And the movie, I'm not necessarily married to the comics. I mean, I always thought of Reed Richards, even when I was a kid, as being like a 40-year-old dude. And Sue Storm was in her early 30s, and Johnny Storm was younger, and Ben Grimm was around Reed Richards' age.
Sure.
So the idea of having younger Fantastic Four is odd to me, but it doesn't bother me. I'm like, okay, make me buy into it.
Right.
Just like Josh Trank made me buy into Chronicle. But, Josh Trank has got so much bad press lately. I want it to kind of be good. I'm hoping that it's good. It's interesting. It's not, look, just like we talked about Galactus. A little hard to put Galactus on screen and make him believable.
Purple poo cloud.
I mean, and I just think that I've got an open mind for this. I want it to be good. I really do. And Ant-Man to me looks terrific. It always looked terrific. And it looks like it has a great sense of humor. And I even like that Father's Day spot. I didn't know being a father, they had that special Ant-Man Father's Day spot about him being a dad. I didn't know that was a big part of the movie.
Thanks for spoiling it for me. I didn't know that. Just kidding.
Sorry, man.
I have not seen all of the commercials, but yeah, the new Fantastic Four spots and the new Ant-Man spots. I've already been looking forward to both films. I think Ant-Man is going to be a lot of fun. It feels like it's a lot of fun. An advanced word from all our friends. Like, it's a lot of fun.
A lot of fun.
It just feels like that. And I cannot, actually, I was a big fan of Ant-Man. Like many years ago, I've told everyone here, that was one of my first scripts I ever wrote, was an Ant-Man script, and a friend of mine who passed away drew it. So I have this really cool origin story from back when I was like 19, and it dealt with shrinking technology to be able to like throw like 600 tanks inside of a suitcase. So hopefully that's in there, and it would be like, hey, I could say my friend and I thought of this 20 years ago, and blah, blah, blah. But anyway, I'm looking forward to just being entertained by Ant-Man. Fantastic Four is another thing for me. It's one of my favorite comics. As a kid, that was my comic book. I loved monsters, Godzilla, mutants, creatures. And here you have basically four creatures, human beings who've been mutated into monsters fighting other monsters.
And I love like Byrne's run on Fantastic Four. John Byrne's, it was the cosmic nature of it all. I loved his run on Fantastic Four. It was so good.
And so this is the chance to infuse that sci-fi horror, which feels like that's what, like, Chronicle is a great start with Superman, Lex Luthor, things that they couldn't do with that.
Right.
They added that like horror element to like
it was
that.
good.
So I mean, that feels like this is a natural progression. So to me, even back like many months ago when he mentioned he was like looking at Cronenberg stuff, was like, that's perfect for Fantastic Four to like look at body horror movies. Is insanely smart.
Yeah,
So
I think so too.
I'm looking forward to Fantastic Four. Let's move on. Olivia Munn doing her Psylocke moves. At least she's gonna know how to. It's like at least she's the one doing it. It's not a stunt double with her head attached to it, like Photoshop style or something. So
she looked great too. I mean, I've always loved Betsy Braddock as Psylocke, right? She used to be. She was somebody else and then became Psylocke.
Okay.
I really liked and seeing her. She really knew how to wield that sword. I mean, when you see a beautiful girl that knows what to do with a sword, well, let's just say that I was very impressed.
Who daddy? All right, you know what? Let's move on. Let's talk about the next thing, which is Flashback. We're going way back, kids. Before you were born, it's 2003. Hulk. It's Ang Lee's Hulk. Was quite a surprise when it came out in 2003. Up until that point, we just had Bill Bixby and Lou Ferrigno's classic TV series to get all green ragey monster about. So let's go on. Let's check it out. What are your thoughts when you think about Ang Lee's Hulk?
You know what? I don't hate this movie. Like, this movie through the years has gotten a lot of hate. Definitely the stuff towards the end with Nick Nolte as his father and, turning to some sort of like absorbing man.
Electric cloud?
Yeah, like just that stuff I did not like. But I did like the stuff with Eric Bana as Bruce. It's just the internal struggle, his relationship with Jennifer Connelly and that stuff. So it was definitely before, because this isn't part of the MCU. This is before Iron Man, all that stuff. So it definitely doesn't have that same flavor as the ones we have now.
Right.
But I thought that there was interesting work in there. I think it just needed to be changed up a little bit.
I am an unabashed lover of this movie. I think it's an auteurist vision.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Ong Lee had come off like Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, which is one of the great superhero movies ever made. But I think the fact that, he kind of went back retro and used the comic book panel design to do his transitions. But that weird Oedipal thing made it really sort of interesting. And what happens at the end, admittedly a little bizarre, but some of the super heroic action, like when you see Hulk battling tanks and in the desert and, leaping miles, that stuff is awesome. And I really think that, look, it doesn't provide the joys that, say, reading a comic book. One of the great Hulk storylines, like when he was the fixer in Vegas, the Gray Hulk was a nightclub bouncer in Vegas. I mean, it's not like that. But if you leave and you open your mind, kind of like, Quaid and Total Recall, open your mind. If you can do that and sit down, I think there's a lot of joy to be had in that movie. To me, it's kind of the Star Trek, the motion picture of superhero movies, certainly of the MCU.
For me, unfortunately, I really hate this film. It's an experiment that is like, hey, let me experiment and see if I fuse these three things together. Look, it's a creature that's barely smash it, destroy it, don't let it escape from the lab. I look at like Ang Lee's Hulk as like, I agree with you. His mindset as to not being a comic book reader and like even his mentality about it. I remember reading an interview and he was like, well, I looked at it as like, what is a Hulk? What would make someone turn into a Hulk? The way he was, even his thought process about it, and then trying to use comic book panels, even though for someone who hasn't read comics, kind of,
or watched the Electric Company when they were a kid.
The way he used the comic panels bothered me. The way the story was set up bothered me. And I absolutely hated the Hulk dogs.
Oh yeah, those.
And I hated the Nick Nolte as the strange father who also is the absorbing man, and the execution of that idea alone was just a failure, just from the beginning to the end. The failure of like, I'm the absorbing man, then you have a scene with them both sitting and how dare you, he's like slapping his kid around, and then he turns into a giant weird electrical cloud, and they have these weird mind fights, which on an experimental movie trip, like if I was in college on acid, maybe that would be kind of cool, but I'm in a movie theater wanting to see a Hulk movie, so I was like, is he gonna turn into the absorbing man? No, he's a weird lightning cloud with like strange images of scenes. Like, how did they film that? Like, that's one of my big pet peeves is when you see scenes from a movie cannibalizing itself to show you scenes from a movie inside of a weird cloud. I'm like, that's bull. Sorry. That's very annoying to me. So I feel like that always happens with like movies that we don't know how to finish or end this. What if we cannibalize the scenes from these other things and show it as a flashback? It's just a cheap way out. My feeling about Eric Bana, he's a great actor. Love Jennifer Connelly. I thought the attempt at making the Hulk a movie was a good attempt. And like some of the scenes you mentioned, there's fantastic, amazing visual effects. That middle sequence where he's fighting the army and he's jumping around like a little flea, bing. Yeah. Me and my girlfriend Holly always talk about him like a little bee, like a little flea hopping around. But some of them are really cool. Just shots of him like, floating while he's jumping and then landing.
I loved all of that.
I did too. That's what I mean. I can sectionalize movies and be like, the movie as overall, like the Hulk, just Hulk, is kind of a failure to me, but I could take these like 5 or 10 minute sequences, like when he jumps on that plane, remember? And it's like, he's like 20 feet. He's like a giant creature. The angrier it gets, the bigger he gets. I remember one scene when he's like escaping from the lab and he's crawling through like a little pothole or something. Guy comes out and his head comes through it. You're like, how big is the Hulk?
Right.
It's insanity. Like, so, I mean, as an experiment in early superhero filmmaking before we kind of like got normalized after Iron Man, I mean, it's kind of like now we're dividing into camps. Like we've got the Marvel Cinematic Universe and we've got like the beginning of the DC Cinematic Universe with Batman v Superman is going to introduce everybody. And they're going to have like a sprinkling of 1,000 different DC and Marvel characters over the next like 30 or 40 years. And then everyone else is like, get out of the way, trying to fight their way into that middle ground area. So we're going to have a lot of time to experiment in the superhero world and the world of filmmaking with all these different characters. But back then we didn't have that. We just had X-Men, we had Blade, we had Spider-Man, and then we had Hulk. So it's like, big budget films were just not happening in like 7 or 8 a year with everyone like, get out of the way. I've staked out some, July 4th. I'm July 12th. No, that wasn't happening. Someone's like, Ang Lee's doing it. I'll check that out. He just did Crouching Tiger. He won an Oscar. Now he's making Hulk? That's weird.
But it was ballsy. Like, I was really excited to see, what is that guy going to do?
Right. And then,
Like, how do you bring that sensibility? I mean, he directed The Ice Storm, you know, I mean, which is a fantastic movie.
Yeah.
I love The Ice Storm. It's a movie that I always thought was about the apocalypse, really, if you want to look at it that way. And then seeing him do the Hulk, it was just interesting. Like, wow, what's that going to be like?
I loved his Pi film. What was it called?
Life of Pi.
Life of Pi. Thank
Oh,
you. That
amazing.
was a beautiful film.
Beautiful.
I mean, but once again, didn't really appreciate the effects artists that helped win the Oscar for him and the
Yeah.
cinematographer who shot a green screen, and he won an Oscar. And the effects company went out of business. Kind of messed up. So, Ang Lee,
argue with
hopefully
that.
next time you'll recognize actually all the people who worked on the film, and so will the cinematographer. I don't even remember his name, but he didn't thank any of the people who envisioned the thing that he shot, a piece of wood and a green screen. It's an amazing job. Let me congratulate you for your Oscar. Let's move on. Spotlight, the comic spotlight today is going to be Criminal. It's one of my favorite film noir kind of comic books pretty much ever. It kind of took over Sin City for me. Ed Brubaker has done so much more than add the Winter Soldier to Captain America's resume. He's also written one of the best crime noirs ever published, and it's called Criminal. If you haven't checked it out, I need you to immediately purchase it and start reading it. It's also the fantastically talented Sean Phillips does all of the artwork on the entire run so far. We enter the dirty, grimy, scum-riddled, backstabbing world of the corrupt, the destroyed, the insane. And it's just jaw-droppingly super insane fun to be in that world. What do you think? Have you guys checked it out yet?
I love Criminal, and I have to say, you know how I have a fetish for my hardcover comic books.
yeah.
I do. And it's also one of the great deluxe versions. It's one of these things. It's probably one of my most thumbed through books, because you always want to. I always pull it down. I'm going to read a little Ed Brubaker,
Definitely.
which coincidentally is true of his Captain America run as well.
Yes.
I'm always pulling it down and reading it, just like, oh, I'll go back and, like, I think the Trial of Captain America just came out as an omnibus edition, and there's going to be another Captain America. But I really love. There's been two.
Yes, two hardcover deluxe Criminals.
I can't recommend it highly enough. Like you, I love it. I mean, to me, I think about it. It's not quite like 100 Bullets,
Right.
But it is that kind of noir, criminal element. I mean,
The differentiation between that and 100 Bullets, I'm glad you brought up 100 Bullets, because I'd mentioned that a few shows back.
I love 100 Bullets too, but in a very different way.
100 Bullets is a little more fantastical.
Yes.
It takes that idea of like, I've got this suitcase filled with 100 bullets that if you shoot somebody, no one's gonna say anything. You can get away with a crime. You can murder somebody. It's like, and then they slowly introduce you to these like super secret organizations of criminals. Wherein this story, Criminal, is straight up noir. It's straight up just like grimy criminals backstabbing people in back alleys, just like hard luck. I'm out on my luck. I'm trying to write something, but I'm forced to do this other thing. It's like
Double, you know, one of the great noir films of all time, Double Indemnity.
Definitely.
It's a modern comic version of that.
Yeah, it's like Kansas City Confidential.
Absolutely.
It's like it's got that realism to it, but it's also like, hey, it's a criminal realism. It's like, what are these people actually trying to do? What are they accomplishing? And how are they screwing up their lives and everyone else's lives while they're at it?
Really
If
good
you haven't
stuff.
checked it out, I think this would be a fantastic film series. I would love the way it's written. It's like written in like 4 to 6 issue volumes, and then they go right on to another character. Some of the characters come back.
Yeah, they do.
Just kind of like how Frank Miller did his Sin City run. There's a world that Ed Brubaker has created, and these people live in that world.
It would make a great look. You know, when I saw Daredevil on Netflix, I was like, the way, not just because it was Daredevil, but the feel of it had that. I was like, you could do anything. And Criminal was one of the things that I thought of, like, wow, they could do this. Netflix could do this as a noir. Because it doesn't have to be as stylized as Sin City. It's set in the real world. I mean, when it rains, it's raining for real. You know, it's not some black and white blue screen rain.
Totally.
It's
and Sean Phillips has just a great way of illustrating all of these stories. I love his art.
the coloring in the book is
fantastic.
Also
That's
fantastic.
if anything, if they could emulate that color palette, that's what
exactly.
I would hope that they would be able to do. Dennis, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I haven't read it. I know Brubaker's work from Captain America, and you can obviously see his influence on the Winter Soldier movie. I love the crime drama. It's that's like my favorite genre. So seeing something like this, it definitely looks like visually, and the story synopsis looks like that definitely could be into a movie. Maybe it is something more, less. It's not superhero-y. We don't have to have all these powers and whatnot, but it'd be more about the relationships between characters and the storyline. It's something more realistic. And you said it's even more realistic than something like 100 Bullets. So,
definitely.
I'll definitely check it out.
And I would recommend it to anybody. You know, I'm sure a lot of viewers they like superhero comics, and they tend to shy away from something that isn't superheroic. But I can't recommend this highly enough because the stories are so compelling.
Yeah, it's really it's you enter another world, and just like that's the beauty of all of these kinds of things, sci-fi, fantasy, all these genres that we are into. Just like a superhero world that you enter, and you're in Captain America's universe. You enter this other world that you definitely don't want to be part of. You don't want to be part of you don't want to hang out with these people who are in this book, but you want to be a fly on the wall as you live through the bad decisions and horrible things that they do, and be like, wow, that guy's going down a really bad path, and you just watch them. So it's and you're
like
watching
with the best noir.
Exactly. It's a great series. I really hope you guys get a chance to pick it up, and I think this would be a fantastic film series. Just recently, they put out something called Savage Sword of Criminal, which was like the old kind of magazine style, like, Weird Tales or like, Savage Sword of Conan, but it was like, and then you flip it open and it's basically one of these guys is in prison waiting his time out while he's trying to get through this one issue, and he keeps people try to kill him. He's like, so it takes place over the course of a couple days, maybe a week or so, but you'll see it. You should just check it out. I can't say more about it other than read Criminal. Let's go on to the Twitter questions. Number one, let's get right into Twitter questions. We've got Chris Onyx Swan says, hey, assuming we get Cloak and Dagger MCU, should they first appear in Spider-Man's movie, much like their comic debut? What do you guys think? Should it be a Spider-Man thing, or should they just straight up do a Cloak and Dagger film?
I'm not too familiar with Cloak and Dagger, but I don't think it should be Spider-Man, though, because of the nature of their powers. It should be something more like a Doctor Strange. Maybe they appear in the Doctor Strange movie, just because, if they show up in, I know that they came in Spider-Man first, but like Spider-Man right now has not been established. They're gonna, hopefully, maybe they'll do something more kind of not realistic, but you know what I mean? It's more grounded in reality, much like the Daredevil stuff. So if they appeared in something like that, I think it'd be a little too much.
I agree. How about you, Robert?
I do too. Although I have to say, I really love Cloak and Dagger. There's something really eerie about cloaks. Like, what happens if you end up in the blackness, in the void of and the fact that he's got, Dagger was always one of my favorite designed characters. I mean, she's smoking hot as far as comic book characters go, but she's always like the sweet girl that you don't want anything bad to happen to. And like, Cloak is going to mess you up if you do anything to Dagger. Yeah. But it's a little too fantastical. Like, I don't know about the tone, but Marvel's, they're really good. Like, who would have thought an Asgardian, who would have thought Thor could have existed in the same frame as Tony Stark? In the comics, it worked, but I didn't think it was going to work. I didn't think you could see the Rainbow Bridge and Stark Industries.
Right, because they had technology and then they had magic. And then the way they were able to say it is like, all that's Rainbow Bridge is technology. Right. It's just technology, but you think it's magic, but the way we look at it, it's...
But the whole thing about Cloak, it's supernatural and it's very existential in a way. But I do, and you know what? There was never a definitive Cloak and Dagger storyline, not a classic storyline. I have various iterations. There's been many volumes of Cloak and Dagger comics, but what do you do with them?
I agree with you. To me, I don't think they should be introduced at all, even in the cinematic world. I think they work better at it being introduced in perhaps Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., as mutants. That's an interesting idea. And also you tone them down. You got to tone, their powers are way too fantastical. I agree with you. And so you tone it down, you make it it's just slightly fantastical, not crazy, strange, like entering into this liquid soup void of this weird, like, what's happening, lights and everything, explosions.
Where does that even come from?
I don't know. So, that's how I feel. It's like, hey, let Spider-Man have his own movie. So let's move on. Next question. All right. Hey, hi, John. Heroes is great. Thank you very much. And you think ShangChi, Master of Kung Fu, deserves a film? I say yes. I think that would be an incredible feature film, like Kevin Feige keeps going on about. They've got the thriller. They've got the heist film, right? I'm saying, let's get some Bruce Lee action coming up right here. I think this could be the Marvel film that blows away the raid. If they did it right, ShangChi, how do you say his name? I'm saying it wrong, I'm sure.
No, it's ShangChi.
All right, good. So what are you guys' thoughts? This is something that, for me, I remember this as Paul Gulacy, the artist. Paul Gulacy did Master of Kung Fu.
And Doug Mensch wrote it.
Right, Doug Mensch wrote it. Because I love this series.
I did too. And back in the day when Doug Mensch and Bill Sienkiewicz's Moon Knight, which I worshipped.
Yes.
I loved ShangChi, Master of Kung Fu, and that's what led me to Moon Knight. And I was a big Doug Mensch fan, but Paul Gulacy, amazing. I mean, he go on. There was that space comic he did for Epic.
He did so many. He did
So
Marauder. He did Six from Sirius.
Six from Sirius. That's what I'm thinking.
Like
about.
I've read all of the stuff that Doug Monk.
Six from Sirius is so good.
Yeah, if you guys haven't checked it out, I don't want to ruin future episodes of Heroes, but Six from Sirius is one of mine that I'm going to be talking about. If
Paul Gulacy is one of the great.
He's fantastic,
artists.
a great artist, and he's done almost every single comic book character from all around the.
I was a big Michael Golden, Paul Gulacy fan.
Totally,
Michael Golden drew Avengers Annual 10.
Oh my God, Michael Golden is like crazy. Now he's doing
Introduction Rogue.
He's the official artist of The Walking Dead now, Michael Golden. But you go back, he's a co-creator of Rogue. And this guy's Micronauts drawings, like I mean, just his illustrations of basically what was a toy line, kind of spin off of Star Wars.
So good.
Those guys, it was Bill Mantlo and Michael Golden, rocked the Micronauts. We're sweating it all out.
This is we are
getting sweaty. It's too late. It's too sweaty. Dennis, what do you think?
I think, eventually I think he could be in a movie and it would do well, but I think they need to build him up. I think they need to introduce him in something like the Daredevil Netflix series or this Iron Fist Netflix series that they're talking about and get him started there because he doesn't have any powers, right? So they need to build him in those and then get a fan base and then move on to a movie and do what you're talking about, do a raid style movie with him in it, and then maybe we can incorporate some cameos from other characters.
Yeah, just normal characters. Don't go super powered. I mean, the great thing about the Marvel universe that we have to remember is there's so many characters. It's not just like you have DC and they have Batman. He's like, I'm a rich guy, I'm human, I've trained, I've built my body to physical perfection, and I have all this money to get incredible gadgets, and I dress up like a weird bat and I fight villains. Marvel has the same kind of characters. They've got people like Moon Knight. They've got ShangChi. They've got a whole bunch of characters who are human, but also you can enjoy their fantastic adventures. So that's something that it's weird when you like have ShangChi. You wouldn't want like Thor showing up. No, just ruin it.
No, I mean, I would love to see the Raid meets Game of Death in the MCU.
Yes.
I mean, come on.
That has
would
to
be
happen
awesome.
immediately. Kevin Feige, make that happen.
Yeah.
Come on. All right, let's move on. We got a question. Where will Sean H. actually, and by the way, Don asked that other question before. Sean H. asks, AMC Heroes, where will the MCU go after Infinity War? What are your thoughts? Like, where are they going to go? After you have Infinity War, War 2, we know that's going to be the culmination, or at least we can kind of take a half-assed guess that, I wonder what's going to happen in Infinity War. Maybe an Infinity Gauntlet might be involved. You know, it's like, yes, I believe the glove will be worn by a character named Thanos. What's going to happen? I'm sure every one of the Avengers and everyone else in the entire universe of Marvel is going to show up and have a giant battle. What's going to happen afterwards? What are your thoughts?
You got to go back the other way. It's kind of like what the James Bond franchise, what happened to the Bond franchise in the late 70s. You had these two epic Bonds. You had Spy Who Loved Me and then the remake Moonraker. James Bond goes to space. Like, where do you go?
Jaws.
Yeah, where do you go after James Bond goes to space? And then the next movie, 81's For Your Eyes Only, came, and it went back to the roots of just the spy movie. And, they had mountain climbing, and that the big climax was at this monastery on the top of this mountain, and it wasn't. That's what the MCU is going to have to do. It's going to have to bring it back and make the stakes more personal. I don't need to see cities get destroyed. We can do superhero stories where it's personal and intimate. I think that would be interesting. Of course, where do you go after you have the War of Infinity, the Infinity War with the Infinity Gauntlet, and Thanos wants to make out with death.
Right.
He's loved death. I mean, what do you do after that? Where do you go? I don't know. Do you start over? After the Infinity War happens, does the universe reboot and recast? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think you're onto something about going the other way, going more personal, because every time like sequel comes out or another movie comes out, it's always raising the stakes, right? It's got to be bigger. First, it's like you got to save the city, and then you got to save the state, you got to save the country, you got to save the world. Well, in Infinity War, you're saving the entire universe.
I know.
There's no coming back from that. Right?
All of existence.
What stakes are you going to raise for that? So you do have to go back. And then the question is, how are they going to tie all the movies together? Is it going to be each individual movie is more personal, but they have like their cameos from other ones and they live in the same universe, but there isn't a big overall storyline? Because, I mean, that kind of... When the Marvel Cinematic Universe started out, that kind of was what was happening. I mean, they were dropping little hints, right?
Right.
That we're going to bring everything together, but they weren't directly tied together.
No, but that's what I like about, Civil War. It really comes down to an ideological difference between two men.
Right.
You've
They can
got
make it
Steve
smaller.
Rogers.
Yeah.
They could do it. Yeah, they could do it smaller. And I think that of all the MCU movies, I'm most excited for Civil War because it really does come down to that ideological difference makes it interesting. The stakes are still high because what's worse than having two good friends who fight on the same side that suddenly have a rift between them? And that's as dramatic as the universe being destroyed.
I gotta say, I'm with you on Civil War. I'm most excited about that Marvel film. Why? Because Winter Soldier was so well done. It was like, it felt like I liked, upon
so well
reflection, Avengers of Age of Ultron, but I liked Winter Soldier better because
did
I
I.
felt like it was a more satisfying story. I don't need to see the Avengers fight a million robots or a million Chitauri or a million soulless gem creatures from Infinity Wars. What I want is a good story, and I want to care about what's happening. I mean, whether or not it's the Spider-Man Ferris Bueller kind of riff with John Hughes, you have to care about the characters to, feel like you saw a movie that was worthwhile. I mean, I think Civil War, like you mentioned, it's going to basically be about two characters and a rift happening. And yeah, like 600 other people are in it. Hulk's in every single character is in it. But those are going to be a few big battle scenes. And I think they're smart about, especially the Russo brothers and the same writers are back doing this again. So what they did on the first film, I think they're going to deliver on this second one as well.
And then they're doing Infinity War as well.
Yes,
I just
so-
want to make sure I do not want to see Daredevil or Punisher fighting Thanos. That would be
won't happen.
terrible.
That
No,
would
they're
be
going to fight each other in the
horrible.
second
Oh my
season
God.
of Daredevil on Netflix. But
Yeah.
if they're going to do a rom-com, because that's another genre they have.
Sure.
I think Thanos and Death could be like when Harry met Sally.
That would be the most insane rom-com ever. Let's move on to Andy Ward's got a question. Yeah, who is your favorite Robin? Is it Nightwing, Red Hood, Red Robin, or Damian Wayne? Let's start with you, Dennis.
Nightwing. I mean, he's the OG, the original.
Right on.
Dick
Dick Grayson.
Grayson. He's never more mature. People probably get mad at me. Never really cared for the Robin character himself. So Nightwing to me is more. Jason Todd was annoying, and then he ended up.
You gotta feel sorry for him. He got beat to death
true.
by the Joker
That's
with like
true.
a giant
I
metal
liked him much
stick.
better when he was Red Hood.
Right on.
And then you have was Bruce Wayne's son now, Damian.
Right.
Yeah, he's cool too, but Nightwing for me.
Right on. How about you, Robert?
I have to say Nightwing. I mean, I was a fanatical Teen Titans fan.
Hell
Pardon
yes.
me, the new Teen Titans.
Yeah, with George Perez.
George Perez and
Marv
Marv
Wolfman
Wolfman.
rocking
I
it.
devoured those
my
comics.
God.
And then there
Terra.
was,
Let's just
the most shocking,
Betrayal.
thing that
I
ever
know.
happened in all of comic history.
And people don't even know about this.
No, they don't.
Here's some sweat right here. Get the volumes that Marv Wolfman and George Perez wrote. You can get the omnibus 1 and 2, and you will read about Deathstroke and Terra. And we don't, no spoilers, but read that and tell me you weren't freaked out and shocked. That kind of stuff is amazing. And
the
art's
Judas
incredible.
contract was,
Yeah.
but in that
Fantastic
first
series.
run, in the first 53 issues of that volume,
Mm-hmm.
starting around 1980, when Kid Flash, and Robin, they dropped their clothes, and then Nightwing came, and I remember, I loved that costume, and it was great. I mean, a pain in the ass for George Perez to draw the first Nightwing costume.
George
and with
Perez,
the high
George
collar,
Perez
it was-
eats that for breakfast. He likes to draw scenes that have like 600 different characters floating and fighting in them.
I
So-
can't recommend that first run of New Teen Titans enough.
Yeah.
It's so good.
So you pick Nightwing.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go. It's a 3 for 3. I'm picking Nightwing. Why? Because it was like he's the original Robin. He transformed. He grew up. He became his own character. He wasn't just a Batman clone.
No.
And he has his own thoughts. If you read Teen Titans, he was running a group of superheroes. So it's totally different than Batman, who operates solo and occasionally has a kid sidekick that he puts in danger, which I always thought was weird. It's like, instead of having a grown person, like another man or woman, fighting alongside me, I'll have a small child. I was like, I think Nightwing was sort of like, I don't agree with you. I'm running my own thing. I got Titans Tower. Nightwing, I never really was a big fan of the outfit. Even the George Perez outfit, just didn't like it. But years later, I like the idea of Red Robin, if that could have been Nightwing. We'll see what happens. I'm not a big fan of all the other little baby Robins that have shown up and died. And come back with all that
Lest
stuff,
we
so.
forget too that Nightwing, I love redheads, and Starfire was Nightwing's girlfriend, Corndar from Tamran. I mean, I'll tell you, when I was, in my adolescent
Yes,
years.
and let's also, sorry to mention, Starfire also was like always drawn in a bikini, and she was incredibly hot, so that helped. It doesn't matter that she was an alien and she had red hair.
That
was
made
also,
her even better. Yeah. She was like, you know what?
And she was really cool.
She was really cool. And
Marv Wolfman, thank you so much for my teen childhood. We both are thanking you. And
I actually dated a girl that looked just like her.
Wow.
And she was from Russia, so she was
So
an
for
alien.
the kids who are reading this, who don't know what we're talking about or watching us, just check out Teen Titans. Get on Amazon or something. Order those books. Let's move on. All right, so we talked about that. Let's talk about Bruiser J. Brooks has got a question. Hey, AMC Heroes, there would be no Batman without the Shadow or the Phantom. Would you like any old pulp heroes to return to the cinemas? Let's start with you, Robert.
Doc Savage.
Bam.
Doc Savage, Man of Bronze. Ron Eli?
Ron Eli.
It was not a good movie.
Horrible film.
Not a good movie.
Don't even look it up. Forget what we're talking about.
But I just thought, Doc Savage, Man of Bronze. That just sounds badass. I love Doc Savage. And, I don't know if he goes back as far as say, Buck Rogers or Flash Gordon. But
I think it does. It's a pulp.
it is a pulp character. I really like that. And you know what I'd like to see done again? Now that James Horner died, and one of his great scores was for The Rocketeer. It wasn't a true pulp character, but it was based on pulp characters.
Dave Stevens, the late Dave Stevens, incredible, beautiful artwork.
Absolutely. And I would love to see, I have a real affinity for those 40s characters.
Sure, The Rocketeer was also directed by the original Captain America from the first movie, Joe Johnson. He directed that. Also designer of Boba Fett.
And then The Shadow, that was The Shadow.
The Shadow, I don't think has ever actually gotten a good take.
No.
I think the Shadow film that was directed by Russell Mulcahy, he's a music video director who is claimed to fame is doing The Highlander, which he, I think is great. He loves to buildings, lightning, exploding, windows explode every time things happen with a Mulcahy film. But the Shadow, just even with Alec Baldwin, just like whatever deals they had to make to like, he's always Alec Baldwin. I'm like, when's he going to be the Shadow? He's always like, has to take his, it's like, he's barely the Shadow, What do you think, Dennis?
I'm excited for the Flash Gordon reboot that they're going to do, supposedly with Matthew Vaughn if he takes it over. Would you consider the Spirit of Pulp?
Yeah, definitely.
Maybe a better version of that, not the one that Frank Miller did.
Yeah, I wonder about how to adapt the Spirit for our day and age right now. Something like, you just have to look, if you were going to go and do the Shadow, are you going to go back into the 30s and do a 30s style one? Can you take the Shadow and put him in now? We go back to Howard Chaykin's run on the Shadow from
which was
1986.
Very cool.
Really cool.
Really cool.
Now, it went back in time, then went forward. He had two sons. It went back in time, went forward. I think there's a way to do the Shadow and not have to go back to the 30s or 40s and update that character. I think the same thing can be done with Doc Savage. I think one of the mistakes that all these reboots of these characters that come from pulp novels is the headset of having to take it back to the 30s or 40s. Look at the Fantastic Four. We haven't seen it yet, but look, the origin was based in the 60s. And a lot of people are like, you should make it in the 60s and it should be. I'm like, look, it's a new interpretation. The way to keep things fresh is you have to change things up. So if this Fantastic Four doesn't work, maybe they will go back to do a 60s version of the
Well, I'm excited the new Man from U.N.C.L.E. movie.
Right.
You've got Napoleon Solo and Ilya Kuryakin. Takes place in the 60s. And there's something, but it's sort of that cool, hip, retro future 60s.
Definitely.
Maybe that's a way to approach it.
I love that idea. Yeah, if they could do it like that, I think it would be really cool to watch, but I just have my doubts.
Like, what if you were in a Metropolis, a Fritz Lang 1927 Metropolis sci-fi future, but then you had a pulp hero?
I like that.
Well, you could do it for those type of movies, but something like Fantastic Four, they're never going to do that because remember, they want to make a shared universe, right? So they're going to have the X-Men movies, so they want to be able to cross these things over, so they have to make it a modern age time.
Yep. Well, if they do the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen reboot, which they're trying to do, all the literary heroes from the 1800s, the 19th century are going to come back.
That'd be fantastic. If they can reboot that and do a good job. I love those graphic novels. They just failed at doing the movie. Let's move on to the next question. We got Jip Candorp asks, could Chris Terrio be the driving force behind the DCCU? Now, Chris Terrio is known to have taken over David Goyer's writing tasks on the screenplay for Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. Now, supposedly, we're hearing that he's actually writing, I guess he's writing Justice League 1 and 2, and he's also doing The Batman with Ben Affleck. So, just hearing the fanboy in me gets excited to hear like they're doing a movie called The Batman. So I'm like, that's pretty awesome. What do you guys think about Chris Terrio? I haven't seen anything besides the things he's already written.
Well, yeah, I mean, if he brings, what we need is a sensibility that brought us Argo. You know, I think it was Ben Affleck who brought Terrio in to rewrite the Dawn of Justice script.
Yes.
And that makes me happy because look, David Goyer is great, but he's a comic book dude from way back. I want somebody who's not.
Right.
You know, I want somebody to the best superhero movies are the superhero movies that make us believe that the superheroes are right outside our door. That's what we want to see. If superheroes really existed, what would they be like? And you need a writer like Terrio, who's not so steeped, or maybe he is, I don't know, but I think he's not. If he's writing movies like Argo, that's what I want to see in my superhero movies. That's why Winter Soldier is so good, because that's the closest thing to a real world approach. And I think these superhero movies need that.
I would be incredibly surprised if you met Chris Terrio. He's like, I have all the Jack Kirby comics. I own like 25 long boxes. I've been reading. They're like, that's Chris Terrio. Yes, I'm a big superhero fan, and talk like that, and like, you know, even like walked around like this. I constantly holding comic books. So anyway, well, what do you think, Dennis?
I think he can be. I mean, he actually doesn't have a huge resume when it comes to writing.
Right.
I think Argo was maybe his third thing that he wrote. He won an Oscar for it, so maybe he's at that point. You know, like after you win the Oscar, it's like, okay, now I don't have to shoot for that again, and maybe he can spend the next 10 years working on DC films and be the producer / writer that's overseen everything. And if he's doing Justice League Part 1 and 2, we know that's going to help, because the way that they're doing it versus Marvel, they're having the Justice League movie up front.
Right.
So that's going to inform all the new viewers about who these characters are and where they're going. And so that's going to send them off into their solo films. And if he's doing the Batman 2, then yeah, I think he's going to have a huge influence.
Right, he's setting up the architecture of what will be the cinematic universe for DC. And you're right, he just won an Oscar. He's like, now it's time to have some fun, you know? And it looks like he's having fun. Let's move on to the next one. Caleb Broadnax asks, has there ever been an original superhero film made? Not one that's based off a comic book.
Oh.
Yeah, there's been a ton of them. It's just you don't remember them. Meteor Man, Blank Man, Condor Man, Hero at Large.
Yeah, I was going to say,
John Ritter. John Ritter. Thank you.
That's one of my favorite. If you guys haven't seen Hero at Large, it's kind of a dramedy, a dramedy about an out-of-work actor who dresses up as Captain Avenger.
Yes.
And there's a Captain Avenger movie coming out, and he puts on a Captain Avenger costume, and he goes to supermarket openings to promote the movie. And then one day he thwarts a minor street crime. Yep. And then he actually has the mantle of Captain Avenger foisted on him for real.
And a lot of politicians start trying to use him and do this stuff.
And Ann Archer, who's cute as a button, who is Michael Douglas's wife in Fatal Attraction, which you never understood why he would leave her and go to
crazy.
But I love Hero at Large, and it's on DVD, and I have it. It's what a great movie.
It is a fantastic film. What do you think, Dennis? Like besides the ones we've listed off,
one movie that I like that a lot of people like to bash on is I actually liked Hancock. Though the Peter Berg film with Will Smith and Charlize Theron, I think they established kind of a cool mythology behind the two characters and why he's superpowered, and then the reveal of her character as well. So I think that would be cool. I don't think it will be because it didn't do that well at the box office.
I'm going to say one that I really enjoyed, Hero High. It was about a superhero family, and then all these families send their kids off to high school. And it was like Kurt Russell played a superhero, and I just remember like watch that. I thought it was gonna suck, and I was like, wow, that was actually really fun. So Hero High I'm pretty sure that's what it's called. So
Sky High.
Sky High, is that what it's called?
High, I think
I
so.
totally had it wrong. I think you're right. It's called Sky High.
I didn't mean to get too sweaty.
Yeah, actually, it's Sky High. You are very correct, and I'm guessing that he's right because I think Hero High doesn't sound correct. But hey, that's up for grabs, so I'm going to have that now. If this, hey, I'm writing my own high school story. All right, let's move on. Braden Turin says, with the animated Goon film being made, what comic property would you want to see or would work better as an animated feature film? Dennis, what do you think?
This was an odd choice for me, but Savage Dragon, I think, would be kind of cool as an animated feature, because I don't think anyone would actually fund the money required to make a Savage Dragon movie because of all the different characters and all the action that they would want for it. And so I think an R-rated or at least a mature-rated animated feature for Savage Dragon would be great.
They had an animated television series, but that was definitely for kids. And Eric Larson's comic is definitely for adults or older kids. What do you think, Robert?
Well, one of my favorite comic books of all time, we were talking about it earlier, is Howard Chaykin's American Flag. And I would love to see sort of a heavy metal Akira animated, hardcore, R-rated, NC-17 of American Flag, awash in that kind of color.
Yes.
You've got Raoul, a talking cat. You've got gangs. You've got the Plex Mall. You've got Mark Thrust, sexist ranger.
That's right. And
you know,
all those different television little spots.
so Bob Violence. I mean, it would be the greatest, most insane animated movie
And
ever.
I think in this technology that we have now, we could actually emulate the zipatone that Chaykin would ceaselessly and tirelessly use, which is before computers. He would have to buy this kind of like dot matrix type stuff, and it was like this really cool kind of shading. And I remember being in college, like trying to emulate that. I was like, I'm gonna buy that zipatone, and boy, did I suck at doing that. It's like you had to hand cut that stuff out. So Chaykin, props to you for doing that.
And you know that comic, Ken Brusniak,
His
the letterer,
lettering was
It was the one
incredible.
comic book that you'd open up and you could hear it.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense, a comic book that made noise. You look at
Yeah.
the lettering, how it would explode, and you would hear these noises, and I was like, wow, this is awesome.
Definitely. All right.
You just reminded me of one, Brian K. Vaughan's Saga right now. I think could be an amazing animated feature. It's definitely R-rated. It's Fiona Staples' art looks like an animation, and I don't think anyone also would fund something like that because it's wacky and kooky.
Right.
Doesn't have a commercial appeal to it. So an animated movie would be great for that.
That's a great idea. Saga's great.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to the very last question of the week. It's the extra sweaty question of the week, and it's by Nelson Manatabi. I'm ruining your name. Mantanapapool. I'll try that one more time. Nelson Nantanapapool. How you doing, Nelson? You've asked, what would you like to see a big screen adaptation of the greatest American hero? Believe it or not, I'm flying on air. Never thought I could feel so free.
Heroes
What do you think?
karaoke.
Yes. What do you think, you guys?
You know, it depends. I think absolutely. I mean, if you did it like Anchorman, like you could set it in the 70s.
Oh my God, that would be
and do a
fantastic.
retro version of and play it up, make it R-rated.
Zach
really,
Galifianakis is the greatest American hero. What do you think?
I'm into it. I'd see that.
I think definitely R rating is the way to go. Something like the 21 Jump Street reboot, just something where it's kind of
absolutely.
tongue in cheek, kind of poking fun at itself. And yeah, we have to hear the theme song.
I would love to hear that, and I would go for having multiple different comedic actors and actresses playing the greatest American hero. Like no one is ever successful at flying because he'd always be like, whoa, William Cott would always be like the only superhero with an afro who was white, who could not fly. Even I, as a kid, who was so happy, I was like, thank you for having a superhero, anything on television instead of the Hulk. I was like, look, I love the Hulk, I love Lou Ferrigno, but I wanted something else along with that, and they brought in the greatest American hero. Was like very tongue in cheek. You had, William Catt, Robert Culp, some adventure of the week, but the guy could not figure out how to fly to make that alien spacesuit. He couldn't figure out how to make it work. It was constantly, and then as the series went on, they lost their budget, so they kept reusing the same goofy bad shots of him, like whoa, and I started to resent it. Even like I was like 11 or 12, and I knew it was like that's the same effects shot. Just if you're a nerd and you're a kid, you start to resent certain things that
because you take it seriously. It's
Yeah.
like, wait a minute. If you were a kid and you had that suit, you would have figured it out.
by now, yeah.
It's like, come on, dude.
Yeah, stop falling into
How hard can
garbage.
it be to fly?
Yeah, conveniently areas of like big garbage that you'd fall into all the time. Anyway, let's see the greatest American hero with like who. Let's list off 5 people who should be in. I just said Zach Galifianakis. What other comedic legend can?
Will Ferrell could be the dad of the new greatest American hero.
Will
Maybe
Ferrell?
he hands down the mantle.
All right, who else?
You could do a Kevin Hart version.
Kevin Hart would be amazing. I would like to see Melissa McCarthy try to fly in that outfit and fall constantly. She's always like, yeah, I gotta fall. Well, you might as well fall in this film. So
Paul Feig, if he does a good job with Ghostbusters, maybe the greatest American hero, Melissa McCarthy. That'd be good.
I would plus that just because of Heat. I would say Sandra Bullock would be incredible. She showed her comedic chops in the Heat, and I'd love to see her return to some more comedy. So
Kristen Wiig.
Kristen Wiig would be fantastic.
Or Kristen Bell and Dax Shepard.
There you
know,
go.
they're nice.
They both share the same suit.
Right.
Yeah, married couple, like maybe they switch off.
Or they just merge and they both have two heads, like, arguing. All right, guys, I think that's it for today. Thank you guys for tuning into Heroes, episode 15. I'm going to thank my guest, Dennis. Where can people find you online?
You guys can find me on Twitter at ThinkHero, on Instagram, Dennis.tzng, or on YouTube, ThinkHeroPro.
Robert Meyer Burnett, where can people find you?
Well, find me on the Star Trek Axanar website. You can look at Prelude to Axanar on YouTube, and we're going to launch our crowdfunding campaign for the feature film of Star Trek Axanar next week at Comic-Con on the 10th. You can see the first scene from the movie that's going to drop. But find
fantastic.
me on Twitter, Burnett RM, or Instagram, RM Burnett, or on Facebook at Robert Meyer Burnett.
And where, like, if I just typed in Axanar,
Type
like
in
for
Prelude
Kickstarter?
to Axanar.
But if I wanted to go to the Kickstarter, what would I type
It's
in?
Indiegogo. It's going to be
It's
Indiegogo.
Indiegogo. Okay.
And I don't know what you type. I guess you just type Star Trek Axanar or Axanar.
Okay.
It's going to be everywhere next
Awesome.
week. But watch Prelude to Axanar. If you like it, support us.
Right on. And you guys can find me on Twitter and Instagram, just at Jon Schnepp and at TDOSLWH. You can pre-order my film, The Death of Superman Lives, What Happened, the documentary. You can pre-order it right now, get the Blu-ray or get the DVD, or just get the digital download by going to www.tdoslwh.com. You can go there, pre-order it. It gets released July 9th at Comic-Con. We've got our booth, 3915. We'll be selling it there. We're going to have live streaming events. It's going to be a lot of fun. If you live in LA, you can see it tomorrow, July 1st, Wednesday. We're playing it at the Egyptian. We're having a couple screenings. Small theater, so it's going to sell out if you don't come and get the theater. You'll be able to see it July 9th. Once again, thanks for tuning into Heroes, and I'll see you in a couple.